At some point, ancient humans faced a strange problem. They had lost most of their natural coat, but still had to survive cold nights, harsh winds, sharp ground, and long journeys. So they did something no other animal did. They invented a new coat. Not fur growing from the skin, fur they could remove, carry, repair, decorate, and pass to someone else. That invention was clothing, and it may be one of the reasons ancient humans could survive almost anywhere on Earth. But the first clothes were probably not about fashion, not about looking good, not even just about modesty. The story begins with a much bigger problem. Human skin was not enough. Compared with most mammals, humans are strange. No thick fur, no natural armor, no warm coat growing from the body, just skin, sweat, and a very unusual ability to change the world around us. That may have helped early humans survive in hot environments. Less body hair and more sweating can help an animal stay cool. But it also creates a problem. What happens when a mostly hairless animal walks into the cold? That is where clothing becomes more than an object. It becomes survival technology, a kind of portable shelter, a second skin. But here's the frustrating part. The first clothes are almost invisible. Stone tools can survive for hundreds of thousands of years. Bones can survive. Teeth can survive. Cave walls can survive. But animal skins, plant fibers, leather, fur, and woven materials usually disappear. They rot, they break down, they vanish back into the ground. So the first shirt, cloak, wrap, or fur covering is almost certainly gone. There is no single object we can point to and say, this was the first piece of clothing. That means the history of clothing begins like a mystery. The clothes disappeared, but the clues did not. And one of the strangest clues is not a tool, not a painting, not a frozen body. It is lice. Yes. Lice. Because there are different kinds of lice. Head lice live near hair. Body lice are different. Body lice live in clothing. They hide in seams. They lay eggs in fabric. In other words, body lice need clothes. So when scientists study when body lice split from head lice, they get a rough clue about something much bigger, when humans were wearing clothes regularly enough for body lice to exist. That does not give us a perfect date. It does not reveal who made the first cloak. It does not show what the first garment looked like, but it gives us a strange signal. At some point, clothing became common enough that another creature evolved to live in it. That is one of the weirdest ways to study human history. The parasite entered the wardrobe. Some genetic evidence suggests regular clothing use may go back tens of thousands of years, possibly more than 100,000 years. But the exact beginning is still uncertain. And that uncertainty matters, because clothing probably did not appear in one single moment. No one woke up one morning and invented the outfit. It was probably a long process, a hide over the shoulders, a fur wrapped around the body, a simple covering for cold nights, a piece of skin tied with cord, a cloak, a wrap, a belt, a bag, a shelter you could wear. The first clothes probably did not look like clothes to us. They may have looked more like pieces of the environment carried on the body. And that is the first big idea. Clothing began as borrowed protection. Humans borrowed warmth from animals, borrowed strength from hides, borrowed insulation from fur. The outside world became a layer around the body. But how do we know this was happening? Because sometimes the clothes vanish, while the tools survive. Archaeologists have found ancient tools that seem to have been used to work animal skins and hides. Some were likely used to scrape, some to smooth, some to prepare hides so they could become something useful. And in certain sites, animal bones show cut marks that suggest people were removing skins and furs, not just taking meat. That detail matters. Carefully removing a pelt suggests a second purpose, not just food, material, a covering, a blanket, a bag, a shelter, or clothing. The shirt disappears, the leather rots, the needle breaks, but the marks remain. And this is where the story gets more interesting, because there is a big difference between simple clothing and fitted clothing. Simple clothing can be a skin wrapped around the shoulders, a cloak, a hide, a loose covering. It can keep wind off the body, help during cold nights, protect against sharp plants, insects, sun, rough ground, or cold air. But fitted clothing is different. Fitted clothing has shape, sleeves, legs, layers, seams. It stays close to the body. It traps warm air better, and it lets people move while staying protected. To make that, early humans needed more than just a skin. They needed cutting, piercing, scraping, softening, threading, sewing. In other words, clothing stopped being just a covering and became engineering. That may sound strange, but a fitted coat is technology. A shoe is technology. A sewn sleeve is technology. A hood is technology. A glove is technology. These things do not just decorate the body. They change what the body can survive. And And once clothing is seen that way, the human story looks different. Clothes did not just cover humans, they expanded humans. A dressed body could move into colder places, survive harsher winds, protect its feet, sleep in environments where bare skin would be dangerous. In a way, clothing let humans carry climate control on their bodies. Not perfectly, not instantly, but enough to matter. Imagine standing at the edge of a cold landscape. No thick fur, no heated house, no modern jacket, just your body and the things your group knows how to make. Without clothing, the environment decides where you can live. With clothing, humans can push back. That is why clothing may have been one of the quiet inventions that changed everything. Not as dramatic as fire, not as obvious as a spear, not as visible as a city wall, but without it, much of the human world becomes harder to imagine. Cold places become more dangerous. Long journeys become harder. Nights become harsher. Migration becomes more limited. But here's the twist. Clothing did not stay practical. Once humans started covering the body, clothes became something else. A signal, because the human body is not just biological, it is social. People look at each other, notice patterns, recognize decoration, understand symbols. And clothing gave humans a new surface to communicate with. A hide could keep someone warm, but it could also show skill. A cloak could protect the body, but it could also show care. A belt could hold tools, but it could also show status. A bead sewn onto clothing could say something about a person, their group, their role, their identity, their success, their connections, their story. This is one of the strangest things about clothing. It begins as protection from the world, then becomes a way to speak to the world. Before clothing, humans could decorate the body directly. Paint, scars, tattoos, jewelry, hair. But when more of the body became covered, especially in colder places, some of that expression could move onto clothing. The body became covered, so the covering became meaningful. That is a huge change, because clothing is not fixed. It can be changed, removed, repaired, traded, inherited, decorated. One person can look different from another. A group can look like a group. A role can become visible. A story can be carried on the body. And eventually, clothes became part of almost every human society. Not always in the same way. Not always for the same reasons. In some places, clothing protected against cold. In others, against sun, insects, plants, rough ground. Sometimes it was practical, sometimes symbolic. Usually it was both. So the question, why did ancient humans need clothes, has more than one answer. The first answer is survival. The body needed help. Skin was not enough. But the deeper answer is culture. Humans are meaning-making animals. Once something useful exists, we turn it into something more. A tool becomes a symbol. Protection becomes identity. A covering becomes a message. And eventually, clothing becomes so normal that not wearing it feels strange. But historically, clothing itself is the strange thing. A removable body, a portable climate, a social signal, a technology so ordinary we forget it is technology. Think about that. A modern person can wake up and choose an outfit without thinking about the fact that they are using one of humanity's oldest inventions. A shirt, a jacket, shoes, a hat. These are not just things we wear. They are the result of a very old problem. A body that could sweat well, but freeze easily. A species that could adapt but needed tools to do it. An animal that lost much of its fur and then made better fur. So ancient humans probably did not start wearing clothes because fashion mattered. The world was rough. Nights were cold, skin tore, wind hurt. Feet needed protection. Survival sometimes required carrying shelter on the body. But once we covered ourselves, we discovered something bigger. Clothing did not just help humans survive the world. It helped humans explain themselves to each other, who they were, where they belonged, what they valued, what they could make, what they wanted others to see. That is the real story of clothing. It began as survival, but it became identity. Humans did not just invent fashion, they invented a second skin, one that could protect the body and tell a story about the person inside it.